I'm Charlotte McLeod with investingnews.com, and here today with me is Andy Schectman, president of Miles Franklin. Thank you so much for being here.
Charlotte, I wouldn't miss it. It's always great to see you. Thanks for having me back.
It is really good to be catching up with you. It's been a while. I think we last spoke in January, and as I keep saying to many people, so many things have happened since then. So I think definitely over the last few years, de-dollarization has been a big topic of conversation for us and for your many interviews elsewhere that you do. I know you're frequently speaking. And one point that you've emphasized when it comes to the dollar's dominance is the fact that oil is priced in dollars. And it sounds like that is changing. So there's been a lot of talk recently about the end of the petrodollar. We'll get into that. I want to start with the basics, though, for people who might not know. What exactly is the petrodollar and where did it come from?
Yeah, and I think we can put it in context also of where we are right now, something called Bretton Woods 3. But let's go back to Bretton Woods 1. Bretton Woods 1 is when the dollar replaced the pound sterling at the end of World War II, and it was backed by gold. Nixon then subsequently closed the gold window in 1971 because we found that European countries, primarily de Gaulle from France, was coming back with shiploads worth of dollars, pulling into New York Harbor requesting gold at the fixed rate of $35 an ounce, which we promised. That was part of the petrodollar deal. Part of the Bretton Woods deal. So Nixon closed the gold window, and for a couple of years the dollar was backed by nothing. It was a few years later, in 1974, that we, in June of 74, actually that we struck a deal with the Saudi kingdom and by extension OPEC to value oil in dollars and take the proceeds, the excess reserves, and put them into U.S. treasuries. That was the petrodollar deal. We'll call that Bretton Woods number 2. Well, that seems to have just ended. The Saudis we had an exclusive arrangement with the Saudis whereby they would value oil globally in dollars. And for the last 50 years, Charlotte, almost every country on the planet has stockpiled dollars in order to buy oil. That's created a synthetic demand for the U.S. dollar. Now that that deal has not been re-signed by the Saudis, giving them the ability to sell in any currency they want, we are heading into what Zoltan Bozar, one of my favorite analysts who used to work for the New York Fed, he understands the plumbing of the system quite well. He calls it Bretton Woods 3. A system that will be identified by commodities and transparency. So I guess it's important to understand that this petrodollar deal, which has given the dollar hegemony and dominance over the rest of the world because every country needed it to buy oil, is really gone. And now we transition into a new system that doesn't have to be exclusively valued in U.S. dollars, and that's where the next chapter of the story begins.
Okay, I think that's a really good place for us to get started with. So this end of the petrodollar agreement, it gets very confusing if you start to try to look it up online, which I did. Some sources say it's real and it actually did come to an end, and others say this was never really a thing. So how do we cut through the noise on that? What's actually...
Well, that's the thing. It's the exclusivity part of it. I mean, there always was a deal, but the deal was never that they had to value it exclusively in dollars, but they did. Now they came back and they didn't re-up the agreement, whereby they will not exclusively value oil in dollars. And they're making that known to the rest of the world. It was always assumed, indeed, that is what the deal was. The fact that they haven't and publicly have said that we're not going to maintain, let's just call it, instead of a petrodollar deal, let's call it the exclusivity. And they really did, for the most part, 85, 90% of all oil transactions the last 50 years have been in dollars. And a country like Saudi Arabia, for the most part, has only sold oil in dollars. And OPEC has, for the most part, only sold oil in dollars. But that seems to be changing. And that changing, if you look closely, is actually happening right out from underneath us. And I'm sure we'll talk about that. But rather than calling it the petrodollar deal, let's just say that the exclusivity, the hegemony of the dollar only being the sole settlement currency for oil, those days have come to an end.
Okay, I think that helps to understand. So we've come to this point where countries don't have to use dollars to buy oil. And again, staying really basic here, how is this going to look? I imagine some are still going to use US dollars, as I think you're saying, and others will choose not to. So how would you explain it?
Well, there's been a couple developments, and I think it's really important to understand these developments because, look, we could talk about Saudi Arabia joining BRICS. We can talk about Saudi Arabia joining the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We can talk about them and every OPEC country being on the Belt Road Initiative. We can talk about all of these things. Their comment at Davos last year that they're open to taking other currencies for oil. All of these are crumbs that have been laid at our feet. But the big one is an announcement by the Bank of International Settlements. I shouldn't call it an announcement, but an initiative by the Bank of International Settlements and 4 countries. Those 4 countries have developed something called Project mBridge, as in money. Project mBridge, originally, I guess you could say, was a concerted effort by China, Hong Kong, United Arab Emirates, who just joined BRICS as well, 7th largest producer of oil in the world, and Thailand. Saudi Arabia has just become a full participant in Project mBridge, and the Bank of International Settlements is also behind Project mBridge. Project mBridge is a cross-border payment system. And for the last year or two, Charlotte, I've been talking about gold and oil have been remonetized across the globe. We know that the BIS reclassified gold as the only other tier 1 asset. I've talked with you about that for a long time. But oil is also being remonetized. If you look at this very, very large deal that was done in Iran, where their largest airport was modernized, the contract was awarded to China. It's about $2 billion will be paid in oil. Oil and gold are more valuable now than the currencies that buy them. And we'll get to what I'm getting at here in a moment. But anyways, Project mBridge is a cross-border payment system. By the way, the US dollar is not compatible with Project mBridge. Saudi Arabia is a full participant in it, as is the United Arab Emirates. Keep these in mind. They were just the 2 countries that were admitted into BRICS last year. So anyways, when we take a look at this, the first 2 trades that they did to test it in 2023 were Chinese yuan trading with United Arab Emirates, 1 in oil and 1 in gold. They worked. Now Project mBridge is operational at its most basic development. There will be lots more developments in it. I think it will spread to other commodities. It will spread to lots of things, but Project mBridge first is a cross-border payment system that has no interaction with SWIFT. You can't sanction Project mBridge. And it's a distributed ledger technology, transparency. And Zoltan Pozsar, with his Bretton Woods 3 statement, talks about transparency and commodities will be the foundation of Bretton Woods 3, this loose interpretation of where we are, a system that will be about transparency and commodities. But that's just part of it. The second part is what's called the unit. And the unit is a currency that was just announced, a settlement currency for the BRICS countries that was just announced by Dilma Rousseff and Putin and Sergei Glaziev. Now, the reason for the last few years that I would have told you and others that there will be a basket of commodities backing a new BRICS currency and a basket of currencies focusing primarily on gold, the only other tier 1 reserve asset as classified by the BIS, is because Sergei Glaziev, who is a Russian finance minister and the Minister of Economic Development for the Eurasian Economic Union, told us that. This is what they're going to do. But a basket of commodities is too hard because you have too many things going in different directions and shipping costs and all these things. So it looks like they've chosen gold as the only commodity inside this new settlement currency called the unit. In fact, they just announced at a meeting, well, it's interesting, by the way, this meeting 2-3 weeks ago in Novograd, Russia, coincided with the G7 meeting where the Royal Crown Prince was asked to come to the G7 meeting. He was invited, he turned it down. So I'm sorry, I have other things to attend to. And he sent his finance ministers to the BRICS meeting in Novograd, where it was announced that there was a meeting between Putin, Glaziev, and Dilma Rousseff, who used to be the president of Brazil, who is now the president of the BRICS New Development Bank. This is no small job. She's the head of the BRICS New Development Bank. And she came out and publicly said that there has been an agreement in principle to use a new settlement currency called the unit, which will be backed 40% by gold and 60% of the local currencies in the BRICS Union, BRICS plus countries. And that gold will be in the form of kilobars and will be deliverable or redeemable for those entities. Now, The unit for now will just be for central banks and maybe large institutions. It will morph into something bigger, we assume. But here's how it works, and here's the interesting thing about it, is that the unit will, these tokens that these countries are able to mint, and it's interesting too, as we step back, we've seen almost 30 countries that all of the central banks have been buying gold, right? We've been talking about that more than at any time in history. But what's another common theme that we've seen is repatriation of gold. All of these countries are bringing their gold back. All of them. It started in 2017 with the Bundesbank and Bank of Austria, Hungary, Turkey, Poland, the Czech National Bank, the Dutch National Bank. We just saw a few weeks ago Saudi Arabia and Egypt bring their gold back from the New York Fed, along with a half a dozen African countries. Saudi Arabia and Egypt were just admitted into the BRICS. And India bought 1.5 times the amount of gold that they bought all of last year in the first 4 months of this year and brought it home, along with 100 metric tons that they held at the Bank of England since 1991. Brought it home. Now I'm going somewhere with this, trust me. But the counterparty risk theme is very much in play here, where we've weaponized the dollar against all of these countries and weaponized the treasury. We've stole $5 million in U.S. treasuries from Russia. I mean, we've defaulted and stole it. And we've used it to buy munitions to give to the country they're fighting in a war. This is a line you cross and you don't come back from. This is a line where no one trusts us anymore, where Janet Yellen can tell CNN just a few weeks ago that, well, we're okay with Putin and Xi being friends, being in the BRICS and all, but if Xi gives 1 penny to the Russian war machine, we will sanction their banks, their companies, and Beijing itself. Never mind the fact that we've given $260 billion to the Ukraine with no congressional oversight, along with Stinger missiles and F-16s and the intelligence on where to drop it. We don't count. So the world looks at us as being hypocritical, right? So anyways, Project mBridge will, first of all, Project mBridge will allow for there to be no more sanctioning, right? There will be no sanctioning with Project mBridge, but the unit currency, which will be 40% gold and a basket of the other currencies, will be the primary trade unit, the settlement unit, the basket of gold and the basket of currencies will be minted in the member countries. And here's where it gets interesting. It will be put into an escrow account, taken off the ledger, so to speak, off of their balance sheet and put onto the mBridge ledger and held in an escrow account in their own borders. It doesn't need to be sent to a central authority, not one bank holding all the gold. Each country will hold their own gold and mint their own tokens, pull their currency out of circulation, and it will be very, very, very heavily audited. Big penalties for not maintaining compliance with the whole unit ecosystem. And it is redeemable. So when you look at all of these countries who are buying gold at a record pace that the world has never seen before, the central banks, using the suppression of the Western paper market to buy things at subsidized prices, and so they don't get crowded out of their trade telling everyone what they're doing, the price continues to be suppressed. Yet if price were so important, why do you see the most well-funded and well-informed traders in the world, the central banks, buy more gold over the last few years than at any time ever in history, but repatriating it? Because leaving it at the New York Fed gives access to the COMEX. Leaving it at the Bank of England gives access to the LBMA. These are the epicenters of liquidity, the rule of law, who have squandered that privilege by weaponizing, not only here, but in the European Union, where they're taking all of the interest of the $280 billion in Russian assets and using it to give to the Ukraine. No, no, no. When you do that, you've lost trust, period. So what gold represents in your own position is the lack of counterparty risk. So let's bring this all together. The BIS is involved in this. The BIS reclassified gold as Tier 1. All of these countries are buying the heck out of gold and repatriating it, bringing it home. Project mBridge allows for the trading cross-border payments not using US dollars. It's not compatible with it. Saudi Arabia just became a full participant in Project mBridge. The largest oil producer in the world just became a full participant in Project mBridge, turned down a meeting to go to the G7, went to the BRICS meeting, and did not re-up the exclusive deal for only selling oil in dollars. And when you realize that all of these countries who are accumulating gold can create their own unit, one of the things that's interesting to note is that everyone talked about, well, how are these countries ever going to agree on a common currency? They don't have to anymore. Because what Project mBridge will allow these countries to do is maintain their own monetary autonomy, their own monetary authority to build their economies from within, not being reliant upon a third-party currency like the US dollar. The gold will be held in their own borders, and if they want their currency to be accepted as part of the BRICS and part of the unit ecosystem, they have to be prudent in the way that they run their own monetary affairs. So the bottom line is they all maintain their own monetary autonomy, will be able to trade with one another outside of SWIFT over mBridge, but settle in this unit token. This unit token will be 40% gold, 60% local currencies, and will be redeemable in gold upon demand. And so when you talk about what does it really mean, it is the beginning of the end of the dollar hegemony, or of the dollar supremacy, because I would argue what we've seen over the last several months, Charlotte, that the hegemony of the dollar is gone, because it's not the only sole settlement currency anymore. We're seeing all sorts of deals being struck in local currencies, as we talked about last time, where, you know, China is buying corn and soybeans from Brazil and paying for it in digital yuan, which is then immediately convertible on the Shanghai Gold Exchange into gold. The combined volume of the Shanghai Gold Exchange and the Shanghai Futures Exchange over the last 85, 90 days is up over 200% and has now surpassed the COMEX market in terms of volume of transactions. It's the second most important metals exchange on the planet. So what we see, this little by little by little that I always talk about, logarithmic decay, little by little by little by little by little by little by little, we are chipping away not only at the transactional value of the dollar, as all of these deals used to be in dollars, now they're not, but the settlement status or the reserve status, which has always been U.S. Treasuries, well, we've screwed that one up too, because we've weaponized it. And if I don't like what you're doing, Charlotte, you can't use the dollars, but you can, and you can, and you can. And it doesn't matter what we do because we make the rules. That's grown thin, and I think it's a problem. And so by weaponizing the dollar, by doing all of these things, we have pushed this union together, where now gold, if you look, not only has it outpaced it over the last 50 years, just now it's outpaced its return, but over the last 25 years, since 2000, gold has doubled the value of the 10-year treasury, the performance, with no counterparty liabilities. So when you see all of these governments buying gold, but equally as indicting is repatriating it, and realize this common settlement currency for all of these transactions in the new BRICS union, where, by the way, at the end of the Novigrad meeting just 2 weeks ago, 59 countries said we're joining, on top of the 10. You're talking the majority of human population. This common settlement currency will disincentivize the need to own and procure treasuries when you can buy gold, which not only has outperformed the treasury market both over the last 25 and 50 years, doubled it over the last 25, but has no counter liability. And the unit says you can keep the gold in your own, within your own jurisdiction. It will be independently audited, better not mess that up, but they don't even have to send their gold. So they don't need to trust one another in the respect it's a cooperative endeavor. And in order for a cooperative endeavor to work, you must perform and behave accordingly, not coercively, but cooperatively, which fosters growth and trust and all of these things, which little by little by little is becoming a real deal. And our Western media, Charlotte, they don't do a bad job of telling us what's happening. They do no job. And so most of the people that we love and care about here in North America have no idea what's coming. And you can't get out of the way of what you don't see coming. So to me, this is the rallying cry. This is what I'm passionate about, is telling people, go to the BIS website, download the Project mBridge white paper, go to the unit website, read their white paper, 50 pages long, it'll blow your mind, and you'll see that this is a real trend in motion.
Okay, that was a very, very comprehensive look at what's no, it's great. I think it's important for people to know, as you said. So just a couple of clarifying questions, I guess, to make sure that I understand. So Project mBridge, this is the payment system, and it's up and running. So they've done tests with this. Okay. And so the unit, this sounds like this has really kind of just happened. Yes. So curious to know, when will that be in action? You know, we were here a year ago talking about, is there going to be a BRICS currency? And it sounds like this is kind of the birth of that. So
when Dilma Rousseff came out and said, in principle, we've agreed upon it, and this is what it's going to be. Now remember, Sergei Glaziev is the architect of this. He was in that meeting too. They said, we're so much in agreement of this that we will hold a special meeting in September in China just for the unit discussion. Well, what is in October? October, the next month, is the big BRICS meeting, the big one. Now, there will have been 200 meetings approximately from January 1 till October, all BRICS related. Most of them in Russia, some in China, and some in other places too. But the bottom line is that they've come out and said we're going to have a special meeting in September to define all of this, potentially announcing it the month later in October. So there are no guarantees that they will do so, but what we can see is a real concerted effort to where you have the architect of all this, Glaziev, Putin, and Dilma Rousseff having two meetings at this meeting in Novograd 2 weeks ago, and come out and publicly say, yeah, this is not just some rinky-dink politician. She was the president of Brazil and now the president of the BRICS and Development Bank, and she said, in principle, this is what we're going to do. And the really important part is clarity. There won't be a BRICS common currency, at least not yet. Everyone will maintain their own central bank digital currency to trade cross-border outside of SWIFT on mBridge. But for settlement, it will be in a common agreed-upon settlement currency backed by gold, redeemable in gold if need be. But ultimately, this settlement currency could end up having greater value based on supply-demand rather than just the price of gold. And that's kind of what the white paper talks about. But it will be something that you're not beholden to any one central authority. And that's the most important thing to keep in mind here. So each country has their own agenda, their own economic agenda, their own monetary agenda, so that there doesn't have to be just one currency that's dominated by the largest player like China or like Russia or whatever it may be. Everyone has equal footing at the table in this case, and that's one of the things that makes it so intriguing.
Okay, and what does this mean for the price of gold? I think many people listening will be wondering about that. So many of these countries, we've been talking again for years about central bank buying of gold. They've been building up their reserves. Now they're going to use it for this purpose. What happens to the price of gold? So not only
that, there's been a lot of talk lately of comments made by the head of the Dutch central bank. A balance sheet means assets balanced with liabilities, right? That's what it's supposed to mean. It's supposed to balance out. Gold, ironically enough, in all of the central banks is held in an account called the gold revaluation account. You have gold as an asset on this side and the revaluation account on the liability side matching it. So the rules of the central banks is that they cannot offset a liability with their gold holdings. And so they balance it out. You got the asset and the liability. It's the same amount of gold. It's in the revaluation account. Gold is valued on almost every first of all, every central bank holds it in the revaluation account, and all of the European central banks, gold is valued at $35 an ounce. It's still the Bretton Woods numbers. So the head of the Dutch central bank said, I know our balance sheet is turning negative, but we have 20 billion at today's prices in gold on the revaluation account, and even though we can't use it, it's nice to know it's there. My feeling is this: all of these countries, what did the BIS say? Gold's the only their tier 1 asset. All of these countries are buying gold. Who's behind Project mBridge? Also the BIS. When all of the countries in 2017 started repatriating their gold, starting with the Bundesbank and Austria, Hungary, Turkey, Poland, Czech, Dutch, then the next year, 2018, they bought more gold as a group than they did in the 60 years previously combined, doubled that in 2019, and then mysteriously and ironically, the BIS said, oh, by the way, gold's now tier 1. You don't think they knew? So what are we seeing now? All of the banks buying up all of the gold, repatriating their gold, and the BIS is involved in mBridge. What did the Dutch National Bank guys say? Oh yeah, we have gold in the revaluation account. I know it's there, so I don't worry about my balance sheet. All of these countries who have been accumulating gold are also accumulating massive amounts of debt. So is it possible that we see all of the central banks involved in this revalue gold to a much higher level? To people think that doesn't happen. It happened in 1933 when Roosevelt confiscated gold and devalued the dollar by 40%. After he confiscated all the gold, it means gold went up by 40%. But what if they put gold at a level 10,000? James Rickards is here telling people 27,000. Now your balance sheet goes from putrid to pristine, just like that. Now they pass a rule that they can offset each other now, and it's revalued to a much, much higher level. If you don't think that's possible, look what's happening in China right now. Silver right now is over $4 an ounce higher on Shanghai than it is in LBMA and COMEX. Slowly, 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 slowly jacking up the price and arbitraging everything that's over. The price is what people are willing to pay. So if the West says gold's 2,000, but all of those countries say no, it's 12,000. Thank you very much. It's all going to flow that way, where they can arbitrage in the gold revaluation account. So what does it mean for gold? It's the only other tier 1 reserve asset in the world, and the most powerful players who know the playbook are not only buying it, but repatriating it, removing counterparty risk, the whole issue with the treasuries, pegging it to a new system that doesn't allow for sanctioning, confiscation, and doesn't have one unipolar currency that we all have to be beholden to. I think gold goes higher than anyone ever thinks possible. I think it never comes back down because it is pegged to a new system. How high that is, I have no idea, but I would tell you much higher than people think possible. Be my truthful answer.
Okay, and with that in mind, I think I always ask you this at the end of every interview, but what should people be doing right now? And I continue to ask it partially because I like what you usually give as your answer when you talk about diversifying within the larger trend.
Yeah, you're paying attention. Thank you for that. I appreciate it, because my mentor, Richard Russell, always said the way to succeed in investing is not to be broadly diversified. It is to identify the primary trend, take a very large position, and broadly diversify within it. So in my mind, if the dollar is on its way down in value, I mean, forget about the fact that we're printing or accumulating $1 trillion in debt every 100 days. That's $1,000, $100,000 every second. 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 every second. That's the amount of debt we're accumulating on top of a almost $35 trillion debt and almost $200 trillion in unfunded liabilities. $99 trillion alone in Medicare Part B. $75 trillion in Social Security, $22 trillion in Medicare Part D. And how long ago was a trillion seconds? 31,688 years ago. The game is over. As Rick Rule will tell you, if you're not a contrarian, you're damn well going to be a victim. And if you're fully invested in dollars, you're destined to go broke. You do what the big money does. You broadly diversify within the primary trend, which would be a falling dollar. Precious metals, mining shares, agricultural land or ETFs, oil and gas. You do the best you can to be diversified within a trend of a falling dollar. Because if all of this happens, Charlotte, and we see the world, there's a man named Mike Adams. I'm on his show a lot. He's really smart. He's the health ranger. Very, very smart man. And he talks about something called Project Sandman. If you Google it, you'll see it. 150, 175 countries. It's interesting because that's about what we see on the Belt Road, which is Chinese Belt Road Initiative. And the theory is all of these countries somehow, he knows this or talks about it, that they've agreed to dump treasuries and dollars at a time, all at once, like that. Now, what we've seen is a slow de-dollarization and de-treasurization. I know that's not a word, but these countries have been slowly selling treasuries and dollars, where China was at 3 trillion, treasuries are just over 700 billion. They have to do it slowly to not cut off their nose to spite their face. But if this happens, and we get to a point where the slow de-dollarization starts to gain recognition from everyone else, and it goes faster and faster, and then bang, everyone dumps it, just get it out, sell it now because it's collapsing. The byproduct of that are interest rates that spike to the moon to compensate for all of that inflation that hits our shores. I talk tomorrow, my presentation is I wanted to call it, is it too stupid to be stupid, but instead I'm calling it, is it too foolish to not be planned? The United States government's balance sheet is just over 5 trillion. The liabilities are almost 200 trillion. The 5 trillion, the largest asset to the U.S. government's balance sheet, not the United States of America, but the United States government, the largest asset is 1.6 trillion in student debt. We're broke, we're insolvent. So if indeed they are trying to reset the system by signing executive order to go green, by weaponizing the dollar, by allowing this country to fall apart with open borders, judicial system questions, electoral questions, lawlessness in the cities, I would ask your people to Google and research Cloward-Piven theory and ask yourself, is this happening right now? Because it's ironic. The lead economic advisor of the U.S. government, Jared Bernstein, this knucklehead who many people have seen tried to explain money creation and bond sales, it was humiliating. Go to Twitter and Google that. But then look at Cloward-Piven theory, husband and wife professors who taught a class at Columbia University where he went. This is a guy who has a degree in music and a master's degree in social work. He's the lead economic advisor of the U.S. government, modern monetary theorist who believes in inclusionary economics, advocates for loss of the reserve status. It's a privilege we cannot afford. Weaponize the dollar across the globe, sign an executive order to go green and let this country fall apart. That's what he wants. And Lael Brainerd, as we've talked about, the number 2 modern monetary theorists who helped produce the CBDC with MIT when she was at the Boston Fed and just ran point for Fed Now, which is Venmo and Zelle on steroids backed by the Fed. This is what she wants. So if everyone dumps dollars, which starts out slow and then goes faster and faster, the byproduct is inflation that goes to the moon. The only thing that can happen then is interest rates to compensate, not controlled by Powell and the Fed, but by the market. You can't have 25% inflation and 3 or 4 or 5% interest rates. Your currency dies. Interest rates spike, everything collapses. The banks that are loaded, undercapitalized and over-leveraged, the insurance companies are loaded in treasuries. The dollar gets dumped, that's dead, as do stocks, bonds, and real estate. It's the Great Reset. And if that happens, this is the old statement, if you're not a contrarian, you're a victim. But ask yourself, could this be too stupid to be stupid? Could it be planned? Could they actually have brought in a guy who advocates for this? And everything we've done offshore is enough to make people say, well, hell yeah. But then you look at this country where most little boys and girls growing up want to wear Levi's jeans and listen to rock and roll music and come to the United States. Do they anymore? Do they look at this country as it just isn't what it once was? I'm a patriot. This country's done more for me than I ever deserved. Gave me an opportunity starting a company in a one-room office when I was 20 years old, 33 years ago. The least likely person to have ever succeeded to the level that I have. I thank God every day I was born here, but you look at what we've done to this country, letting 18 million people in here illegally, destabilizing the inner cities, lawlessness, chaos, elections that are questioned, judicial system. Is there 2 tiers to it or not? Doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. You put all of this together, this country's not looked at the way it once was, on top of nearly 200 trillion in debt, nothing in the way of assets, weaponizing the dollar, and being hypocrites, where we can tell, gee, no, you can't give any money to Putin, but we can give 260 billion to the Ukraine. We don't matter, you do. These are all having, I think, a big picture consequence. And I think it's never been more important, Charlotte, ever, to be a contrarian, to not be all in dollars, to do what the biggest money is doing, and that is to prepare. And that means by de-dollarizing and buying tangible assets. Doesn't just have to be precious metals. It will be anything of value. It could be a hurricane coming, literally and figuratively. So prepare as such. Minimize your exposure to dollars. That's priority number 1. Because how do you get everyone to take a CBDC that no one wants to take? How? How can you say, you're going to take it? No, I'm not. I don't need to take it. Well, what if the whole system collapses? My mentor used to say, the Fed has 2 choices, to inflate or default. How about option 3? Those sons of bitches did it to us. Xi Jinping, Putin, and OPEC, and all of the BRICS, they dumped the dollars. They're not taking it for oil anymore. The whole system collapses. It's their fault. And the people in this country will believe that. They won't question the brain-dead monetary policies that we've had or the fiscal irresponsibility, creating $1 trillion in debt every 100 days. They will rally around this collapsing system, and the only way to take it is you too can be made whole, Charlotte. Just sign on the dotted line and take the CBDC, and all that money that you lost, it'll now be in your account, and you can go feed your family tonight. How do you get people to take something? That's how you do it, and you don't fall on the sword for destroying the system. Is it too stupid to be stupid? Well, ask yourself, does our lead economic advisor, who has a degree in music and a master's degree in social work, who advocates for this, could we have done much better to destroy the privilege of being the world reserve currency? Have we done all we could to cling to that? The fiscal and monetary responsibility, all of these things? I don't know. So I think if you're not a contrarian right now, it's very dangerous. And I would just simply say, do all you can to get out of the way of what's coming. Most of the people around you won't see it, and they'll be affected by it, but you still have time. And it doesn't just have to be gold and silver, but that's a good place to start. For monetary aspects, food, water, home protection, dog food, all of these things. And if you're wrong, you feed your dog, you give food to the food shelter, you drink your water, you pass your gold on to your kids. I just think it's time to look at the world different, because unconventional times call for unconventional thought.
Okay, I think as usual you've left us with so much to think about. I hope that everybody really takes a lot away from this interview, because I think you outlined everything that's going on very clearly. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you know what, Charlotte, I'll just say one last thing. Everything that I've talked about with you, all of these interviews that we've done, and I really enjoyed being here with you, and I thank you for it, and everything I've said up till now, up to the point where I said, could this actually happen, where I try and connect the dots, all of that stuff is factual. The part that is supposition is, could they really be doing this to blow up the system? Are they trying to blow up the system? I'll leave that for your listeners to decide. If they're not, then our politicians are the dumbest fools that have ever been elected to office to represent this country. They're destroying it. But maybe that's what they're trying to do. So I'll let your listeners decide. I hope I'm wrong, Charlotte. I got 3 kids. My youngest is 17. I want them to grow up in a world that you and I grew up in, where there was opportunity and peace. I guess we'll have to see. And to be continued next time when we talk. And you know what? With the big BRICS meeting in October and the election in November, I have a feeling there'll be lots to talk about.
I think so. So we'll make sure to check back in with you when those events are unfolding. But for now, thank you so much for going through all of this. Once again, I'm Charlotte McLeod with investingnews.com, and this is Andy Schectman.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. If you like this video, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We'd also love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a comment below.